Hi friends, today I have a guide on how to use Wraith in Apex Legends Season 8 for you. It's part of my Apex Legends how-to series that I'm doing throughout Apex Legends Season 8 and beyond. Go check out my Bloodhound guide by the way if you haven't seen it already, but for this Wraith guide I think it's perfect if you want to get better with Wraith in Apex Legends Season 8 and beyond, but also even if you are currently a Wraith main, I might have some tips here for you that you might not have thought about, so keep watching and see what you think. Before we do jump into the tips though, many people are asking this season if Wraith is still good in Season 8. And it's fair to ask that question, because she's had a series of nerfs over the last few seasons. And this season, we saw her hitbox increase. This means she is now one of 3 legends with a custom hitbox, the other 2 being Revenant and Pathfinder. It means she's a lot easier to hit now compared to before, when she had the same hitbox as other low profile legends, like Lifeline. Now it's not a huge difference, but it does mean you do take a few extra bullets. And on top of that, she is still classed as low profile, so she still gets that extra 5% damage. Ultimately though, if we look at it, it's fair to say Wraith is still a very strong legend, and in fact still one of the best legends in the game, but just not quite as good as she used to be, now that we have other legends that are also strong, like Horizon. A fun tip, if you're one of those people that misses Wraith's Naruto run, there's still a way to see it. If you go to the firing range and turn on third person view, if you hit her tactical button and run, you'll see she still does the Naruto run. So this is a fun little thing you can do to still see Wraith's awesome Naruto run. Anyway, let's jump into looking at Wraith's abilities, and I'll give you some tips on how best to use Wraith as we go along. Starting with Wraith's passive, her passive is Voices from the Void. You get a voice warning in a few situations that alerts you to danger. Now if you didn't know, there are actually a few different types of warnings. You do get a warning if an enemy is aiming at you, but also if an enemy with a sniper rifle is aiming at you, if a grenade is throwing at you, if there are traps nearby, how many enemies are nearby, and how many people have died near you. So you can actually use these warnings to gain information on the surrounding areas and how many teams might be around. A lot of people think you can only get voices if someone's actually aiming at you, but like I said, there are these other types of warnings, so listen carefully. And a top tip here, or more of just a reminder, is that you can actually remind your teammates or warn your teammates when you hear these voices. They won't hear them initially, but as soon as you hear them, it'll give you a tip on screen to allow you to share it with your team. And it's a good way to alert your team if there's danger nearby, especially if you can't speak to them. I should throw a little warning in that it can be a little buggy, and you don't always hear the voices, so don't solely rely on hearing the voices. Do use your other sensors to judge if there are enemies around. And that's kind of it to Wraith's passive. I do wonder if we will get a class passive in the future for the different classes, kind of like how all of the recon legends can scan the beacons. Sticking with Wraith though, let's look at her tactical next. Wraith's Tactical is Into the Void. Essentially, it takes you into a phase mode that makes you invulnerable for 4 seconds. You also get a 30% speed boost, which is really useful, so you can definitely use this tactical as a way to get away from danger. Again, something to note is that Wraith does have 2 animations that take about 1.25 seconds to activate when using her tactical, so just keep that in mind when you're being shot at and you're trying to use the tactical. There is an animation delay there. It has a 25-second cooldown time as well. I would say that's around average, so you don't need to be too cautious about using it. You can use it fairly often. And to put that into context, the highest tactical cooldown time is 45 seconds, and the lowest tactical cooldown time is about 10 seconds, which is why 25 seconds for Wraith is about in the middle. Also, don't forget while using the tactical, you can't actually interact with anything like doors or loot bins. So keep that in mind. For example, if you're stuck in a building and the doors are closed, you're going to want to get your teammate to open the door for you. Or on the flip side, open it yourself and then trigger the tactical. You can use it on ziplines as well though, so while you can't interact on other things, it is a useful tool to use the tactical if you're on a zipline or even a jump tower. You can kind of tell if enemies are good enough to hit you on a zipline or a jump tower. If the first few bullets hit you, then it's worth triggering the tactical. Now this tactical can be used offensively and defensively. A good offensive use for it is if there are abilities such as caustic gas or Watson fences down and they're blocking your path to a team that you know you've done good damage on. Wraith can actually phase through these abilities without taking any damage, so you can use it as a good opportunity to push a team that you know is weak but you can't easily get to. You can use your phase to get through these abilities and down the enemy team. That's quite a specific example, but the reason I say that is because, let's face it, just because you can phase through things like Watson fences or caustic gas, if there's a full team of 3 with full health on the other side, you don't really want to push them alone, so try and be smart when you use it offensively. Defensively, it's not quite as strong as it used to be. That 1.25 second animation time I mentioned is a lot more than the 0.4 seconds that it used to be. So just make sure when you're using the tactical button that you do have enough health left if you're mid-fight. And don't expect to use it as a get out of jail free card. You now need to be a bit more cautious how you're using the tactical, and it has been like that for a little while now. One top tip here though is you can still avoid gunfire, or at least a good proportion of gunfire, while triggering the tactical. And the way to do this is simply bounce up and down and spin around in a circle while you're waiting for it to activate. It's not perfect, but it will help you avoid a few more bullets while you wait for that tactical to trigger. A few more things to note, the enemy can still see a blue trail as you're in the void, so if you can't get behind cover or you're using it offensively, try to phase through enemies and move around them. You can still see your enemies in the direction they're facing while you're in the void, so you've got 4 seconds to decide if it's long enough to get behind cover, and if not, then try and keep moving around your enemies so they don't really know which side of them you're on, and this will give you just enough time to be in a good position to take out that enemy. Another top tip for the tactical is that you can actually combine the tactical with a gold magazine, and this will give you some protection while your weapon's auto-reloading. And this is definitely useful in some specific situations, for example if you don't have cover to duck behind and you need to reload, or if you've got a weapon that's slower to reload, like the 30-30 repeater for example, and there's no cover, you can hit your tactical and the gold mag will still auto-reload that weapon. And one final tip for the tactical is that you can combine the tactical with Wraith's ultimate, which we'll talk about more in just a second, but if you do combine these two, it will reduce the overall animation time of the tactical, as well as giving you a good speed boost. So this can be useful if you're trying to get away from a team as quickly as possible. Do keep in mind though, that if you are using the portal along with the tactical, it does kind of give the enemy a way to follow you. But at the same time, I have noticed teams don't tend to push through portals if you've deployed a portal, just because they're wary of where you could have placed that portal. For example, you could have laid a trap, or your teammates could be waiting on the other side. So do keep that in mind as a potential way to help speed up you getting away from enemies. So let's finish by looking at some tips for how best to use her ultimate ability. Her ultimate is called Dimensional Rift, and it's basically a portal that you can reach up to about 75 meters with. On your screens you'll see it as rift energy out of 100%, and the further you go, the greater this percentage reduces until you hit 0 and then it auto deploys the portal. And if you didn't know, the portal is about 5 times faster than running, so it is a good way to get your team and yourself into a different area a lot faster. And I mentioned speed boost before. As Wraith, when you're using her ultimate ability, you do get a 25% speed boost while you're deploying the portal. So that's why I said it's a good idea to combine it with a tactical, because it does speed you up and allow you to get away from teams a little bit faster, but it doesn't stack with the speed boost you get with her tactical, so just keep that in mind as well. The main saving you make is from the animation time. One other thing to remember is that the portal normally lasts 60 seconds, but if both ends are in the ring, then it only lasts 4 seconds. So basically, it's pointless trying to use it if you're deep in the ring, because it will just disappear after 4 seconds, which really isn't much time. Now there are a few great tips that I can give you where you can use the portal effectively. Let's separate these into offensive and defensive scenarios, so let's start at looking at how you can use the portal defensively. The first top tip for defensive uses of the portal is actually to use it to block doors. Now obviously this only works if you've got 2 doors, but if you don't have a defensive legend with you in your team, it can be hard to camp buildings. And if you can hear footsteps nearby, you don't really want to get pushed from 2 different sides through a doorway. So you can actually set the portal starting with one end facing the door, and then run to the other door and place the other end facing the other door. And it's a good way to block doorways, so then when the team pushes, they'll actually just end up jumping through the portal and out the other side. You'll only block it for 60 seconds, like I said, as the portal only lasts 60 seconds, but it could be enough to buy you some extra time to heal, or even prepare for the fight. Another top tip for the defensive use of the portal is that you can use it to transport downed teammates to safety behind cover before trying to revive them. And this is often a lot safer than just reviving out in the open, and it gives you a little bit of extra time to get away from the enemy team and give you time to revive your teammate. And this ties in nicely with the most common usage of the portal for defensive reasons is to use it as a repositioning tool to get your team and yourself out of tricky situations. For example, if you're trapped in a building and you know there's an enemy team or 2 just watching that building, you can't get out of the door, then you can use the portal to get your team somewhere safe, or at least reposition to take on a fight from a better angle. So those are a few defensive uses you can make of the portal. Now let's look at some offensive uses and some tips you can use. My first top tip for offensive use of the portal is that you can portal push teams, and in this scenario the portal works as a nice way to push the team and get your teammates there quickly, but also to have the portal as a backup way to exit a fight if you feel like it's not going so well, or the team you've pushed is especially good and you feel like you want to get through the portal and regroup. It also works quite nicely if you're inside the zone but you're pushing a team that's still outside the ring. You can put one end of the portal in the ring and the other end back in safety in the zone, and that will then give you some safety to push out the ring, perhaps down a team, grab a few extra kills, and then get in your portal and get back into the zone. And if you're really sneaky, you could actually use the portal to kidnap someone. You literally do this by placing the portal on someone's head and they'll automatically go through the portal. It's kind of hard to do, you need to get it quite precise, but it could be quite a useful thing to separate teams, especially if your team is waiting on the other side of the portal to down the enemy you've just kidnapped. And my final top tip is that the portal places the way you're facing. So the previous tips I've given you, you want to combine it with this top tip to make sure you're facing the right way when you place your portal. And that's it for my Wraith guide. I hope you found this guide useful, and I definitely feel with these tips you can win more games as Wraith in Apex Legends. Don't forget to hit that big red subscribe button. Come join our community of friends. I really appreciate the support. For now though, thanks for watching and I'll catch you later.